And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a roll call. I think Nicola's going to do that. If you can hear the disco in the background here. Right, so here we are. It's 2 o'clock. This is the Communities in Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and it's Wednesday, the 15th of July. And the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. So I ask Nicola to do a roll call. Remember that you're, like the good people you are, your microphone's off. So when your name's called, put your microphone on briefly and say here or present or some other acknowledgement, and then switch it off again, and Nicola will move on. Okay, Nicola, it's up to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Gibson. If I can go through the rest of the members. Councillor Reid.
Here.
Councillor Gallagher.
Here.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Bainan.
Present.
Councillor Carty.
Here.
Councillor Dunbar.
Present.
Councillor Dunn.
Present.
Councillor Heppel.
Present.
And Councillor Patterson.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellent, that's first rate. The next item on the agenda is minutes. I'll just move these as a correct record, but I think Councillor Gallagher wants to say something. You need to put your microphone on, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. There are some things on the minutes that we still haven't got the answers for, and I would like to request that we, at the next new scrutiny meeting, have a full report on the updates.
Okay, I think we can all agree to that, but we are accepting them as a true record, yes? I can see you all nodding, so we're just going to agree to that. And the next is disclosure of members' interests, other than what's already recorded, and I don't see anyone wanting to add to that, so that's fine. Now
Jeff, sorry, I need to come in on the disclosure of interests regarding the payment made to businesses and what have you. We received some support towards the community centre that I manage, right? So where will I stand on this? Will I not take part in this meeting?
I would have thought that's fine.
Right.
But if there's an officer who wants to, so long as you've declared it and it's minuted, I think that'll be fine.
Councillor Reid, yes, all members are advised that they can declare that interest, but it's not prejudicial and they are able to take part. It's just if there's something very specific around any discussion around the business grants, then they may feel that they exclude themselves from that part of the meeting, but up to date there have been no issues.
Excellent, thank you for that, Daljit. You understand?
Thank you. Just to declare it then, Jeff.
Excellent, great, okay. And so on that brilliant note, we shall introduce Daljit, who's going to speak about 4.1 and 4.2, which is the COVID response and the planning recovery. I think Daljit is going to talk about them as a set, but we would expect our questions to be one report and then the other, not kind of jumping about. We'll take them sequentially, if that's all right. Daljit, it's up to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. It's good to see you all on screen today. So I introduced the two reports today, which bring an update on behalf of the executive team and officers and staff of the council in relation to the work that's been ongoing in relation to COVID-19. As you will see, members of the administration and officers brought to Cabinet a detailed discussion of these reports, and it was felt at that time they would be referred for post-scrutiny to ensure that all members of the council had the opportunity to look at all aspects of our response and the plans that we have in place for recovery. So I'll just start with the arrangements that we've had in place, and as you'll see, we very quickly stood up our emergency requirements. They are covered off in this report, the first report, through our Emergency Community Assistance Plan, the ECAP arrangements. We had taken some time, as we do each year, to refresh our business continuity plans. And it was vital, particularly earlier in the year, for us to do that in relation to COVID and some of the issues that were occurring overseas. So each of the directorates and teams right through the council did quite a lot of work on their business continuity arrangements. And then once the crisis was notified, they were enacted. We then had our local arrangements in place. So we have had a weekly executive team, COVID team, which is our gold command. And supporting that, we have had heads of service and service directors, BIMPT, which is a business interruption management team. This has given us the necessary oversight. So I chair the Gold Command, i.e. the executive team weekly meeting, which is done separately to routine business. And Stephen Holmes, on behalf of the service director team, chairs the business interruption team. And through our COVID meeting, exec meeting, reports are taken through that, and any necessary decisions are documented for an auditable trace being available. We then link into our regional arrangements, which is the Local Resilience Forum. And this is the 6 local authorities which link directly to the area covered by the Northumbria Police Force area. So the 6 local authorities, the police, representatives from NHS England, the ambulance service, and a whole range of other organisations link through, obviously with civil contingencies. And that means there have been some areas of work, for example, excess death management, and some level of coordination on PPE, which has been done in that forum arrangement linked to central government. And as with anything, going through such a major time of crisis nationally and of course locally, that has then enabled us to just re-look at those local resilience forums and to do a bit of work to see how things could be done better next time, should we unfortunately be in this situation again. But in general, a lot of really good linked up work with our colleague local authorities. So if I just come to our local response from Northumberland, we have had really 4 key priorities, alongside obviously to keep normal business running. But our first priority was around ensuring that we put in place effective structures, necessary structures to ensure that we could deliver an enhanced service very rapidly to our population in a safe and structured way. So as you can imagine, a couple of the key aspects of that have been the business hub to support our local structures and businesses and Northumberland communities together. So I hope, some of that information has been useful to you through our weekly Chief Executive's Bulletin as members, to give you quite a lot of detail on exactly what was expected nationally and our local response. Our second priority has been around continuing to deliver our essential services, very much in these changed circumstances for both our residents, who obviously are our key priority, but just as equally our staff, who we have ensured, wherever possible, that we've enacted really good health and safety requirements and support for them too. In terms of the third area, it just links to that in that we've tried to ensure wherever possible maximum safety arrangements in place, and also promoted the well-being of our staff and our residents. That's been really critical. And then a final priority really has been around ensuring that, although whilst going through this unprecedented change and difficult time, we wanted to ensure that we could be ready to recover in terms of our county as soon as possible. So, and that's meant trying wherever possible to return to business as usual as promptly as possible. And we recognise that some of that may not look the same as it did previously. There have been a lot of lessons learned for us in terms of delivery of service. You know, the majority of our staff remaining working at home wherever possible if they're office-based. Our centralised hub around customer service, you know, some staff have been office-based, but you know, we have been supported by some brilliant frontline teams, you know, examples of local services, children's services, our schools, adult services, all people who, you know, at the same time as delivering those key essential key worker services, must have had their own worries, etc., around their own well-being and families. So as a council and a good employer, we've tried to ensure we support our teams as effectively as possible. And in that, we have supported our residents, so they've been safe and sound wherever possible. I'm just going to run through for members a couple of the key areas in terms of the work that we've done. So firstly, in terms of the community hub, you'll know through the regular member briefings that one of the big initiatives that we really very quickly needed to set up and run was around support for our local communities. This ran from very simple things like effective distribution of food, helping people to access medicines and their medical support at times, a range of things in terms of financial resourcing, support for that. And also, you know, one of the key things has been particularly for the shielded residents of the county, we needed to ensure that they had support in terms of social isolation too. So in our county, we've had over 18,000 shielded residents, and over 30, I was really surprised myself, over 13,000 of those have received support or contact from our hub. You know, that's huge numbers of people in a very short period of time. So I'd just like to thank, and particularly around the communities work, Maureen Taylor, who's led that for us as a council, linked to our very effective community arrangements. So there are many organisations and groups and volunteers. We've had over 1,000 residents across the county register to be volunteers and to look to help and support their communities. And our hub has made over 8,000 calls out to vulnerable residents too. So for me, part of this has been about gaining so much from our communities. We've always known in Northumberland that we are highly dependent on local people helping us across our vast area, geographical area. But what we have seen is an extraordinary effort from our VCS organisations, community groups, faith groups, everybody in the community has pulled together. And we've had some really great stories on our communities together, website and hub and social media, about just everyday people just going at that little extra mile, and sometimes a long mile, for all of the people across the county. In those terms, obviously our own services, whether it's local services, continue to collect our refuse, or street cleansing, or helping us with the refuse centre reopening, or grounds maintenance, or our corporate services who've acted on a key for our communications, both to residents, to staff and to members, and our customer services staff who've had to actually change quite significantly from people who generally awaited a call from communities coming in to a mixed service of doing outbound work and contacting people in their own homes to check they were safe and well as being contacted by our customers. And we've seen a huge rise in resident satisfaction in terms of some of these services and the support that our frontline staff have delivered, whether that's been whilst shielding or working at home or actually out there on the front line. So, you know, we've got a range of other services, technical services, for example, ensuring young people, key worker children, vulnerable children attended our schools. The vast majority of our schools remained open. Range of early years providers continued to, and particularly the support to our vulnerable communities and children. So from a community hub perspective, we've had a very positive experience in the circumstances, which, you know, nobody would wish to be in, but a really good response. In terms of the business hub, we have very rapidly, we were required to set up the arrangements through our finance team, through revenues and benefits, and other aspects of the council, such as internal audit, to help us to deliver the small business grants. And that gave us grants of over £86 million have been distributed for over 7,650 businesses in Northumberland. That's an amazing effort by those frontline teams who changed. If you think about it, revenues and benefits usually used to asking people for money and for payment, changed dramatically. IT services put a great system in place, and we distributed significant amounts of money very quickly, achieving performance of top 5 in the top 5 councils and sometimes in the top 3 in the country. For me, this isn't about being first in the country or doing things quickly. It's about ensuring that our residents receive the support actually that they deserve and that we're there to provide for them. So we've still got a bit of work ongoing through the Business Hub, contacting remaining businesses who haven't applied, but also looking to distribute the additional discretionary grants around other aspects of service. You know, things like acting as a stimulus to tourism or digital and professional support grants. So in terms of just a quick, that was not so quick overview of all of the areas of work. We have tried to keep you up to date through our regular progress reports through the Chief Executive's bulletin, but I would just like to thank every staff member across the council who in their own way, whether at home or at work, has contributed alongside all of our great volunteers and all of our community groups in the VCS and other partners. And I'm sure, you know, health service, etc. There'll be people who I haven't mentioned, our fire service, who everybody has just connected, you know, our local police service helping us with the reopening of town centres and controlling car parks, etc. So in terms of just moving on to recovery, we, you know, are a number of weeks into this crisis. We're probably at a really critical time that a lot of things are reopening. And from my perspective, in charge of the responsibilities around staff and residents, it's really critical that we continue to ensure that we follow government advice and actually really sound public health advice. We've had some really great support from our Director of Public Health, Liz Morgan. I can truly say we wouldn't have managed to do half of the things we've done in the effective way we have without her support and that support of her team. She's kept us right in terms of all of the guidelines, all of the constantly changing and evolving situation, and ensuring that, you know, we have robust discussions about what actions we should take, when we should take them, when things should reopen, how we should get back to business as usual. And I know Councillor Sanderson's going to say a little bit about the recovery, so I won't dwell on it because I think that is the next phase for us. And it's important that the administration is very clear about what our role is in recovery for the county. But from my perspective, in terms of ensuring the staff and our residents are safely looked after from an operational perspective, all the only other thing really that I want to say is I'm mindful that we need to ensure we maintain social distancing wherever we can. The current guidance is still maintain it at 2 metres if you possibly can. Please work at home if you possibly can, but also let's try and regenerate and refresh our economy and make sure that people who particularly haven't been able to get out and about previously can do that safely across our great county and in our great services and support our great businesses. So I will just leave it at that. I mean, the only thing I would say is around scrutiny committees. One of the reasons we wanted to bring this to each scrutiny is to enable wider members to ask any questions that they wish to, as in all members, and also to let scrutiny committees set their work plans through their chairman around what they wish to do in their particular area around either the COVID response or the future. So I'll hand over, if that's okay, Chair, to Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, thanks, Dalja. That was excellent. Are you going now, Glenn, and then we'll do questions? Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think Daljeet's covered the ground. The basic point, I think, is that the County Council has continued to function despite everything really well across all parts of the County Council. For myself, speaking on behalf of Local Services and Environment, I'm incredibly proud of the fact that we continue to provide those essential services that we all need, those frontline services that are important to us and to where we live. We've kept the streets clean, despite all the litter that came in almost wagon loads when lockdown was eased. We've cut the grass, we've planted plants, and we've emptied the bins very, very efficiently and well. So I'm really hugely proud of the teams. I'm sure your members will agree with that. Coming out of COVID, this council was amongst the first to open household waste recycling centres. And I'm glad we did do that because the demand was strong, but it wasn't overwhelming. We did manage, thanks to Suez, our partner in these, and also our own staff, and also traffic management people, and the signage staff that produced the signs quickly and all of that. That we managed to make sure that they opened, but it wasn't. It went well and was organised. Then we opened up our country parks, and then our car parks over a phased length of time. Again, being very careful about when we opened them, and then the public toilets, and they're all open now apart from a couple. There are still play areas that are closed because we need to be absolutely safe. We need to be sure of what the national guidance is telling us and being sure that we can do the best we can for our residents, but not to put people in any danger. And on bulky waste, we did restart the service, but we can only run single staff vehicles at the moment. We are procuring screens to put into the cabs and other COVID-related safety items that will allow us to go back to double crewing again. Hopefully that will happen in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and there is quite a big backlog to catch up on, so that we'll be able to start picking up those heavier items that need 2 people to pick up and to shift. Local services were very heavily involved, along with our regeneration staff, in getting the towns open. We did that by kind of modest signage, not going over the top and closing roads and making one-way streets and so on, which we felt would not be wanted. So it was modest but sensible signage, and we also, together with other members of staff from across the council, introduced community ambassadors to offer help and advice to people that wanted them, to encourage people to come back into the towns and start shopping again. That's what they did do. And we got overwhelming support for both the signage and also for the community ambassadors. And again, I'm really grateful to the staff for that. I think, though, if there was one area that has really shone throughout this, it's been our parks. And we all know the parks near us. We have parks across the county, and also, of course, our country parks, our bigger ones. And I think they showed their value by offering fresh air, open space, enjoyment of nature. And I was actually really pleased that people did go and enjoy the country parks when they opened in great numbers. We still have more work to do, but we have invested a lot in our country parks recently. And we have got plans to do some more work in 2 of them. One is Plessy Woods, where we're going to be wanting to get some more car parking spaces, and the QE2 country park near Ashington, which needs some work doing to it so far as parking and visitor parking is concerned. So far as climate change is concerned, our work has continued on that despite everything. We held a steering group meeting on Monday evening, and we are continuing to hold those, working with our partners, keeping the pace going on the action plan and the delivery of the key targets within there. We have got our new engagement officer now, and there are a number of new initiatives that we'll be announcing over the coming months. So I suppose all together, looking at the future and the recovery, it's essential that we pick up on all of those key large investments that we need to undertake, as well as making sure that towns flourish, and our regeneration team are really very actively involved in all of those schemes. I would just say that I do think that officers and members have worked very well as a team over the last few months. It's been quite difficult at times getting decisions made difficult decisions made that affected people. There was a lot of pressure on us a lot of the time, for example, on opening public toilets or keeping car parks closed, or opening car parks or opening public toilets or closing them. Lots of different views were coming at us a lot of the time, but we had to remain kind of very careful to put safety at the top of the list, and making sure that we did our job as an administration, working with the management team as best we could. The real heroes, though, for me in all of this were our frontline staff, who didn't let us down, who worked throughout and provided those essential services that we all needed. Thank you.
Excellent, Glenn. Thanks for that. So can I just remind members what we're doing first is questions on Appendix A. And then we're going to, when we've done that, we're going to go obviously on to Appendix B. If you indicate, as Councillor Heppel has, that would be great. Councillor Heppel.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, can I just welcome this report? Despite its 30 pages, I actually understood it, which is quite a compliment, I think, to officers. From my point of view, I think some of the work done by officers, Chief Executive and her staff, has been quite incredible. I use that word not in a sort of a bad way, because some of the responses from the council in terms of things like the Communities Together campaign, for example, the response to PPE, and in some areas, I think they've actually gone better than the government. And for example, the one I'll reference would be in relation to not allowing people who are leaving hospital can't return to care homes without a negative COVID test. And that was contrary to all the stuff we saw in the press more recently about care homes. So I think that's been really, really good. So I really take my hat off to officers on this one. Can I just ask a couple of questions, Chair, if I can? One is on the Chief Executive referenced the kind of community hub and the volunteers. It strikes me that that's something we need to build on in the future, particularly because they can support and enhance council services. And I think we need to use them more effectively. I know in my own area in Cramlingham, there's been a lot of social media groups established to support residents, which has been really welcomed. The other question I had was in relation, there's one point in the report, I think it's 9.6 on page what page it is now, 13, it talks, there seems to be a 5,500 gap on extremely vulnerable people who haven't received support from the government or local schemes. And I just wondered what the situation was there. I mean, I guess some of them have just refused point blank, but it'll be interesting to see what that is. And finally, although it might be too early to ask this question, but the report references 19.1 million allocated by the government. Question is that sufficient to meet the actual costs we've incurred over this period? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I take it, Dal, you're going to have a go at this, are you? Yeah. And then after that, Liz Dunn indicated she wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think three clear issues there. I think in terms of future arrangements, as I've stated earlier, we do have some recovery work ongoing. That work, as well as being economic and financial, is also very much social and around care. So right through from the types of work that would be associated with the VCS and community groups, right through to core council, adults and social care and children's and families delivered services and everything in between. So critically, probably the one thing I do absolutely know is it will never be the same again. And I know the new normal is a really overused phrase, but for us, there's a big piece of work ongoing with members and with the executive team around all of those three aspects of where we go into the future. The response has been incredible from our communities, and actually for a number of years now we've had plans in place to look at our one council approach, how we deliver services and support families to be independent rather than feeling that they're done to, but looking at new and innovative ways of working with people. And I think if there is one positive to come out of this whole crisis, it is that we really need to build on some of the great positivity that's come out in terms of people working together. On the second issue of, and I totally agree with Councillor Heppel, although working with 13,000 people in a very sort of quick turnaround 2-week way was very difficult, and you know the communities team, we were there, you know, 14 hours a day in the beginning, led by Maureen and the team. So and that was just to ensure that people got the basics. But what did come through really well was everybody who came through on the shielded list or the vulnerable list or were referred through in the thousands, they were contacted and proper checks were made wherever possible. So the 13,000 who've had proactive delivered support or connected support from their local community where we coordinated, they're absolute, but the other 5,000 or so are generally people where either their local community have put an arrangement in place and we've been satisfied that, you know, there are neighbours or family members supporting them, or sometimes our own delivered health and social care services. It might be district nurses, it might be adult social workers, children's social workers. So, you know, as Councillor Heppel will know, clearly having operated services like this before, you can never guarantee that we've picked up every individual we should have. And that was one of the reasons we ensured that the Northumberland News went to every household, because one of our worries was that there might be people who didn't have internet connection, didn't have maybe more vulnerable people who didn't have access to IT equipment, etc. But actually trying to make sure we got to them through the delivery of that Northumberland News through every household made sure that we were trying to reach everybody we could. So we've had some pretty good feedback, and there have been times where, you know, we could have done things differently and better. This isn't a perfect scenario in any way, and we as a team have recognised through our COVID Gold meeting every week where things could have been done better. But actually, you know, you've talked about some of the more vulnerable people who are living in care homes. We supported them with, free care homes with free PPE, significant levels of support on infection control training, additional staffing. But I think mainly on the shielded list and the vulnerable list, we have contacted as many people as we could. And in terms of the funding question, I mean, it is a difficult thing. We welcome, I really and the team really welcome the significant central government funding that we've had. My view on it is we still want more and need more to ensure we can deliver and operate, and I'm sure we will be supported in that. We do pull together a position on our budget arrangements, but obviously, as you can imagine, with this year's budget, some of the balancing savings that were in there, particularly maybe things around income generation, may not be delivered in year. So as you said yourself, Councillor Heppel, it's probably a little bit too early for that, but we will be continuing to seek additional funding and support from government, and also our teams are very good at being efficient and effective, and we'll see some more of that too.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Heppel? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I think the question on funding was a bit too early, but I'll just mention it because obviously it's a big issue nationally. The other thing I would mention, Chair, which I forgot to mention earlier on, in terms of one of the successes, I think, that comes through on the report, is the willingness of the council to work with partners. And I don't mean by that just statutory partners, but people like the businesses, local people, etc. And I think that's a real credit.
Excellent, thanks for that. Councillor Dunn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think my question will be for Daljeet as well, and it's along the same lines, really. I mean, this COVID-19 crisis and the response of the council has seen an increased appreciation of council services, and this definitely needs to be built on going forward. My question is that it's extremely difficult to promote services in wards such as mine, where there are no council info points or buildings, nowhere, in fact, for people to physically connect to the council. And IT isn't a solution for everybody. We've got a problem with IT connection. We've got a lot of elderly people. So my question is really, how can we improve things going forward for the likes of my ward who have none of this connectivity with the council?
All right with that, Daljeet? Yep.
Yeah, thank you, through yourself, Chair. I think, as Councillor Dunn has indicated there, yeah, it's a different picture right across the county, and an individual picture for most wards individually. So, and our job now, well, always is, but even more so now, is to build on the work that's happened now, because actually we have managed to maintain that in some places a very visible network, but also a very virtual network. And it's a bit similar to, who would have thought it at the turn of Christmas that we would have thousands of staff working quite efficiently, effectively from their own homes and delivering services, sometimes in a better performance way than they did previously. So for me, it's absolutely looking at the needs of all of those communities, and it links very well to Councillor Heppel's question around the gains we've made and not losing those gains on a localised basis. So I know we've briefly discussed before around the community hub opportunities through the North of Tyne Combined Authority. That will really help us. We've had some significant funding allocated to us. There's a formal cabinet report coming to North of Tyne, I think it's next week, where we will then progress with some of the work around community hubs and that wider portfolio. But I absolutely accept from Councillor Dunn, there are some very critical issues around not just IT connectivity, but actually people's social responsibility and social connectivity. And having worked, in this area, my background, as most people know, is adult services nurse, and the people part for me is the critical part. And yeah, I absolutely believe, the bins have got to be emptied, the roads have got to be well maintained. for me, the fabric of the community is the people and the difference in all of our wards. And we just need to try and build on this in a very effective way, not in selected areas or, you know, one area is more important than the other. It's actually the whole of our county and a prioritised set of work, but making sure everybody's picked up.
Thanks for that, Daljit. Is that good enough, Councillor Dunn? And then it's Brian Gallagher and then it's Wendy Patterson.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian?
Great, thank you very much, Chair. Same again, Dalja, well done to you and your team. And this report is an excellent report. And I've got to say exactly what Alan Hebel said, very clear for to take the information on. I just want to come on the back of Councillor Dunn's comments. And I'm picking up on the minutes of the early June, where it says, whilst the initial focus centred on the 12 main towns to access funding opportunities, it would then move onto the smaller villages, and this would have movement between the two selves. I know you touched on it briefly, but is there any issues or problems where you felt as though funding didn't cascade as freely as it should have to the smaller communities?
Through yourself, Chair, I probably shouldn't say this, but one of the issues for us, it's been and not that I would ever want to disregard member decisions and cabinets and meetings. One of the things that has been in place, obviously, is the delegation through to myself, which I do notify you of any delegated decisions I take, but the wider delegation around in a crisis through the Constitution, myself and the executive team can enact things to ensure that we can operate as a council without necessarily, you know, meeting as a whole council or some of the meetings happening. Obviously, we've had cabinet regularly and cabinet have had strategic oversight as would be expected. But in terms of financing, we, you know, and Councillor Sanderson touched on it before, we've had some trying and tricky decisions to make, and particularly about which services should open when, what about the risk assessments, are we all happy? And we always got to an agreement. You know, it might take a little bit of coming and going, but that always happened, and a very effective agreement agreed by members and the staff. So for me, we haven't had any issues around allocating the necessary funding. Nobody in either cabinet or in the executive team have in any way been parochial or demanded things in certain ways. So that's been helpful to us. I'm not saying it hasn't been tricky at times, of course it has, but we've ensured that there's been equality wherever we can. And as I've always said, all of the members of the council have their individual patch. I've had numerous contacts from individual members who are cabinet members, members who are scrutiny members, group members, independent members. What we have done is to support those smaller villages or towns or just very small communities, done what has been needed from a service delivery perspective. So, you know, that doesn't mean we've managed to give everybody everything they've requested, but it's been in a risk managed way on necessity to ensure that the safety of residents and the delivery of services maintained.
Is that all right, Brian?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, could I come in on another point?
Well,
generally, you know,
Pattinson.
We are still in an era of anxiety, isolation, economic, you know, issues on a wide scale for a lot of people, and obviously the care sectors as well. And you know, as much as we hopefully step away from the worst part of the COVID-19, that, you know, we've got to be mindful that that can't go away. And I totally agree with what you said. Things will never be the same. So it's reconnecting from, dare I say, a political side to the county side, and then reconnecting with residents as well. So there are a lot of issues still lying there, which I'm sure that we're all aware of. One other point I wanted to come back about Glen. Glen, totally agree with you. The frontline services were fantastic. They went above and beyond, and every meeting I'm at, it's a well done. And you know, I welcome any updates of where we are in respect of the services. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Pattinson.
Thank you, Chair. I also echo Councillor Gallagher, to Glenn, especially the frontline services. It was so reassuring during lockdown to see the men working on the roads, to see our bins being emptied. All of that was wonderful. And especially the business help as well from the finance department, that was wonderful. The only thing that I'm asking about now is, can Daljeet answer this? Normally, if I have a query where I can't get a particular answer to an officer, I would go into County Hall and speak to them personally. Can you advise, are there phone lines which all come up as just council numbers? Do they go directly to their mobile phones, or are they just permanently going into County Hall?
Through yourself, Chair, that it will very much depend on the area of work. So, you know, I think for me, there's nothing better than having a communication with someone verbally, generally. Obviously, it's very difficult because a lot of the staff are working from home presently, and we will need to maintain that until it's safe for larger numbers of staff to return. But actually, there is no reason why members can't book a meeting like this with a member of staff and have a face-to-face discussion, because everybody who is working at home, you know, whether they're planning officers or highways officers or some of the adult care assessment team, they do have their IT equipment and their availability. So it's a really good question, because one of the things we have discussed as an executive team is, as part of the process of getting more of the business as usual meetings and discussions sorted out, some members do actually want officers to come and look at a particular issue. There would be no reason why that can't happen in a safely social distanced way. Obviously, it's down to availability and time, etc. But actually, discussions like this, either on the phone or by video link, are absolutely available. So what I will do for members is, in this week's, probably next week's Chief Executive's Bulletin, I'll just get a bit more information put in about contacting officers and just be clear around some of the key services and how to make contact. Personally, I think it'll generally be via the actual officer's email address, and then it'll be an agreement like you normally would have done to say, can I have a telephone call, can I have a virtual meeting, or can I have a safely social distance meeting? And because obviously there's too many services to run through them now, but I'll make sure that information is circulated.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Then I've got Councillor Carty. You need to put your mic on.
Hi, Daljeet. Yeah, I've just unmuted. Thanks, Jeff. Daljeet, I'm really quite keen on being able to chat to officers via this kind of link, but I wouldn't really know how to do it. So can something be put together there on how it works, right? And just to say, I think this kind of format works really well, saves a lot of money, saves a lot of time. And maybe in the future going forward, when things go back to normal and we do have to go back into council for some meetings when there's not loads to discuss, I think this could be looked at more often, doing the meetings online like this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Through yourself, Chair. I think Councillor Carty, no issue at all. We've got a few stars, well actually we've got a lot of stars of the show in IT. You know, they've stood up working from home for thousands of staff, connected members, virtual meetings. Chris Thompson, our new Director of IT, and the team, the frontline team, have been amazing. So we've got, particularly working with members, you know, we've got Michelle and Tom. So I'll just make sure we include the details in the Chief Exec Bulletin. And then, you know, they're more than happy to give people individual assistance. Lots of members, lots of staff have had, and that's what's really kept us up and running and going. So no issue there. Thank you.
Okay, now I've got Councillor Dunbar. She's just waving her arms around. You'll have to unmute this. That's it.
That's it. Thank you. I would just like to say it's a really comprehensive and very good report, and I would like to applaud all the executive managers and the staff for keeping everything going. The two main things that some have already been said. It was really good to see the services teams working in a state of anxiety and in these unprecedented times. It was nice just to see the bin man come, grass was getting cut. But I also would like to applaud that the schools were kept open for the children of key workers, which was really necessary in the bad times, the really bad times. So I would just like to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor.
Right, so here's me now going to spoil the party. Sorry. I've just got a few questions. I'm on page 3, Daljet, of Appendix A, the top there. It's as anticipated that a further emergency committee meeting will be needed very soon. Do we have how will you know you're going to need one, and when will it be?
Oh, is that the question? Thank you. Yeah, I'll answer that through yourself, Chair. So, as you're aware, Councillor Reid, we've had a number of discussions about meetings and discussions. I have ensured that myself and the officers have kept key members, group leaders, etc., and all members fully up to date. As you're aware, either the officer side or the member side can at any time call an emergency committee. We have had a number of committees now. Obviously, this is not necessarily an alternative to an emergency committee, but is a meeting of members, giving everyone the opportunity to question the approach. You know, I'm very willing to take on board any criticisms. I take them positively, any comments, any things we can do better. We're really happy to hear that. You do have a member on the emergency committee, and I do recall he was at the last committee, and I did say to him as well that happy for him to come back to us. So we will, I think we will need another emergency committee, probably either towards the end of July or early August, just really to tell members about the recovery plans, to take their advice, that's the purpose of the committee, and to assure them that we have all of the right arrangements in place and that. But, you know, people don't, I've always been very clear, people don't need to wait for committees or meetings. You know, my phone's on, everyone has the number 24/7, the exec team's available, we have director on call, and we also have a senior officer allocated to every member. So hopefully that will assure you, Councillor Reid.
Compensate. Page 4, pillar 1, it says NHS swab testing. Is that actually the NHS or is it the contractor?
I'll ask Liz, our DPH, just to give you that information, just so it's absolutely up to date and factual, if that's okay, Liz.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So pillar 1 is all of the testing which is done through NHS hospital laboratories, and that's largely frontline healthcare workers working in hospitals, individuals who've been admitted to hospital, and it's soon going to include all residents and care home staff who are tested as part of an outbreak.
Yeah, it was the fact, is it being run by the NHS or is it being run by a contractor was the question, really.
No, sorry, so all the pillar 1 testing done through NHS laboratories is run by the NHS.
Excellent, that's all I needed to know, thank you.
Okay.
Daljet, page 6, 4.5, There's going to be a new outbreak control board and a member-led public-facing engagement board. When are we going to see the membership of that, or how's it going to be made up? Who's going to be on it, etc.?
I'll ask Liz to come in there on the details of that.
Yeah, so the local outbreak prevention and control plan has been published on the website, and it was published as part of the Health and Wellbeing Board papers, and it's been agreed that the Health and Wellbeing Board will act as the outbreak control board, and sitting underneath that will be the member-led comms and engagement board, which will be a sort of subgroup of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and we're just finalising the first date for the meeting of that group as we speak, hopefully towards the end of July.
Excellent, thank you very much. Then on the top of page 7, Dalbert mentioned this before, and it'll probably come back to you, Liz. So excess deaths management group, can you just tell me what that does?
So yes, I can probably answer that. So obviously originally we had some reasonable worst case scenario planning assumptions that we were that we needed to deal with, and one of the planning assumptions that we had to manage was, unfortunately, a large number of deaths, which would overwhelm our current capacity in terms of mortuaries. So as part of the LRF strategic coordinating group work, an excess deaths management group was set up to put in place systems and processes to manage those excess deaths. I mean, as it turns out, fortunately, we did have a regrettably large number of deaths, but fortunately, it wasn't as large as the numbers we were required to plan for.
Yeah, I think what I mean, how do you manage? What is the management process? Is it just the fact that you're collecting the data and you're discovering that there are X more hundreds of deaths than we thought, or is it some kind of, organising undertaking?
Chairman, shall I come in there? So really, obviously, Liz has covered some of the data issues there. So, regrettably, the numbers of deaths in each and every one of those is a difficult time for that family member. So, on behalf of the council, I would pass on our condolences. In terms of the technicalities of that group, as Liz has said, so it was actually partly the data, but partly the practicalities. Right. So I can give you an example. So one of the issues that the excess death management group would oversee and pull together is things like body storage facilities. So, for example, each of our hospitals and our funeral directors have a finite number of places to respectfully look after people who are deceased. One of the key tasks of the excess death management group was to ensure that where necessary, and we had available in the county additional body storage facilities and the operational arrangements to manage those should we need to put those into operation. Linkages to things like the NHS Nightingale Hospital, a great effort stood up for our region in Sunderland. We all contributed to that. Clearly, our mechanisms of supporting families and the health services staff from a council perspective to ensure that, for example, our coroner's services, our coroner in Northumberland has done a great job. Andrew Hetherington has been part of that excess death management team for us, making sure that the families of deceased individuals, have good support through registration. So they're the types of practicalities. So yeah, there's the hard end data number crunching bit, which needed to give us scenarios linked to national public health data and local data, but actually the council's responsibilities through the LRF groups were to ensure that we had the right arrangements in place, and that if we did have unfortunate deaths, that we could care for people and families appropriately.
Excellent. That's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you very much. I'm nearly finished. Page 14, 10.6. We've got £1.5 million from the misnamed North of Tyne Combined Authority. Where did that come from? Is it our money anyway, or did it come directly via government, or what?
It's through yourself, Chair. It's the funding route of the North of Tyne, obviously the misnamed North of Tyne Authority, and the funding is, as you know, the combined authority, and I know you have a personal view about this, for us as an officer team has been
everything, Dalji.
Yeah, but for us as a team, it's been a very welcome investment by the government into our council area and the other two local authorities, and it's given us real opportunities to bid for additional funds to get real innovation and started arrangements around business, training, skills. I won't expect you to agree with me, but from our perspective, so that's where the money came from.
And was it a fair share of what was available?
We have had a very good and equitable relationship North of Tyne. You know, the three authorities and the three cabinet members, the three leaders or mayors and the three deputy leaders work as an effective team. You know, my job and that of the leader and the deputy is to maximise income into Northumberland. So I'm very happy with those arrangements.
Good. I'm nearly finished. I'm on page 16, and it's 1.3 with the number of staff. It's about remote working, basically. You've got the over 2,500. I was just wondering what percentage of the payroll that actually was. Do you know offhand, or you know, an approximation?
Is Kelly on the call? I think she is. Kelly?
She was before.
If she's not, oh, sorry, there she is.
She is.
Hi, Kelly. Would you be able to take that one? Sorry, I don't know if you heard it.
Yes, could you just repeat that, please, Chair?
Yes, I can. What I said was, on page 16 of the report, it says the number of remote people who have been working remotely is 2,500, and I was just wondering what percentage of the staff or the payroll that actually is.
Sorry, I thought that's what you said. Yes, it's around about 60%.
Wow.
But some of those staff are partially working remotely and some of them are partially in the office. So entire remote working is probably about 40% of the total workforce. And then we have about 20% that are doing a bit of a hybrid.
Well done. That's first rate. But it kind of opens up this whole thing about, you know, do we need big buildings anymore? You know, if people are happy to work remotely and the job gets done, and there is no doubt that you've all done extremely well. I haven't had one resident phone me complaining about how the council's dealt with this. Not one. And usually you get people, you know, complaining about the slightest thing. So you've done really well. That cannot be taken away from you. But I think we just need to bear in mind some of the lessons, some of the good lessons we've learned. As Councillor Heppel said before, you know, the community stuff we've done and the links we've made, the downward links we've made, we must make certain that we cultivate them and you know, repurpose them if we have to. But let's not forget how we did that. And certainly the remote working is just going to be the thing, isn't it? So
yeah, sorry, just share on that. Definitely. And one of the big, for us, our delivered service to our communities is the priority alongside the health and well-being of our staff. So irrespective of COVID or not, we all will need over the next few years to ensure the right arrangements in place. And, it's like I said, things will never go back to what they were, but we'll take the best bits. And we've got a lot of staff. So Kelly and her team have done a great job in terms of the workforce elements for us and supporting staff and the well-being of staff, as well as delivering all the services they do. And one of the critical things, they've kept in touch by survey, by call, to make sure that every member of staff has a risk assessment, they know what their duties are, they're well supported, and we will actually use that data and information and the regular contact and staff engagement to plan for how services are delivered in the future.
Yeah. Thinking outside the box, but you can just see that planning is going to be inundated by planning applications for extensions, can't you? As people build offices above their garages and, small things at the back of their houses. Anyway,
Chairman, that's a really good thing because it will get our builders work, won't it? So let them.
Excellent. There we are. We're all thinking about it now. So if that's Appendix A dealt with, I don't see anyone else indicating they wanted to speak. Then Appendix B, questions on that. Oh, I shall allow Councillor Jackson to speak.
Right, thank you, Chair. If I can just say a little word about the recovery plans for the.
Of course you can.
Just to sort of set the context, really. We had the strategic context just given to us by Mrs. Lally about sort of dealing with the COVID crisis, and hopefully that's been successful. Now that we're obviously quite conscious the crisis isn't over, and we're still very careful to make sure everything's done in a very safe way right across Northumberland. Well, there's a few things strategically that we're putting in place to try and get us out of this crisis, both as a county council and as a county of Northumberland. The first thing it's been said before, but we're trying everything possible to get the county council services back to business as usual. I think residents right across the county are starting to expect that, and we've been doing that on probably about as quickly as any other council up and down the country. The second part of it is getting our towns up and running again. And in Northumberland, our towns are the keys to all of our communities, and they're the keys to all of our local businesses and local economies, and trying to get those jobs going. And I think we've been successful as a county council in putting in the arrangements in the towns that are proper but relatively light touch, so that people feel that they're encouraged to go and use their local towns again. And the towns up and down the county are getting gradually busier and busier and getting back to normal. And we also want to kind of support our communities as best we can. And then finally, there's the issue about the local economy, because there's no doubt that we've taken a huge economic hit here. And the indications are that our local economy has dropped by something like 23 to 25% just in the last 3 or 4 months. So we've got a 6-point plan of things that we think will make a real difference to get Northumberland up and going again. The first part of that is to get our tourism economy up and going, because 19,000 jobs in Northumberland depend on tourism. So we're working with tourism businesses. We've set up a new tourism hub to give them daily advice and support. And we're also going to kickstart a promotion of the county very soon indeed, to encourage people to come to Northumberland. The second thing we're doing is investing even more in new infrastructure up and down the county. So we're actually pressing ahead with all of the really ambitious plans that we've got to invest in our schools, invest in our leisure facilities, invest in extra parking to make sure more people come into our towns, and invest in different forms of housing up and down the county to get those builders going and to get our local economies going. Thirdly, we're working with government on the new Northumberland line, and I think there's this impetus from government to actually invest in.
Don't get me started on that, leader.
Yeah. Well, it's a shovel-ready project, and the government are very keen on it. As well as you'll be really pleased to hear that the government have just given us an extra £750,000 to invest in Blythe Town Centre within the next few months, and that's in addition to everything that's been announced so far. So we're cracking on with Blythe, Hexham, Bedlington, Ashington in the next few months, and there'll be real progress there. And we're going to work in with our rural towns to actually invest in them as well. We're carrying on with the business hub based in the county council to give continuing ongoing advice and support. And part of that £1.5 million from the North of Tyne Combined Authority was going towards that, and that's to support our businesses, because we have a lot of small businesses that haven't got the expertise sometimes to access some of the things, some of the finance in particular. Then we're going to drive forward with the climate change action plan. We're resurrected, well, we're not resurrected, we're pushing on with new vigour to support our and create our great Northumberland forest. There are plans to plant a minimum of 1 million trees, and that's just a start, and we'll crack on from there. And we've had further support from central government and the Minister, Zach Goldsmith, on that one. And then finally, to help people into new jobs, we're doubling our emphasis on apprenticeship and training, so that we make sure that everyone, young and old and middle-aged as well, everyone right across our community can access the opportunities that we're creating. So that's our 6-point plan, and then on top of that, we're renewing our efforts to consult with communities, to consult with businesses, and work in partnership with the whole county. So it would reinvigorate the county and kickstart and get back to the successful economy that we had just 3 or 4 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, leader. Any questions? Councillor Carty, don't forget to put your microphone on.
It's on. It's not really a question. Well, it might be a question. You were on about trying to create more jobs for young people, apprenticeship things and such like. Would it not be an idea to tackle your government and ask them to look at the pension age again? That was made, a pension age was increased for women. Maybe look at that again and decrease the pension age back down, but for men as well, so that the younger people could get a chance to get on the career ladder. Because obviously people like me have got to work another 7 years extra, and that's 7 years of a job a young person could have had, you know. And if you looked at it that way, the benefits that they're getting, that could have been put into the pension schemes. It just seems so topsy-turvy. Plus the fact, if young people came into employment, taking some of the jobs that people might want to retire from, give them a chance to learn with that person, so they learn the job with the person before that person retired. Do you know what I mean? It just seems that it might be an idea again to push your government to really look at that pension age issue, especially for the women as well as the men. And Peter, I know you're smirking, but it's a really touchy subject with a lot of people.
Yeah, but I don't know whether it's within the remit of this scrutiny group to be lobbying the
Sorry,
county.
Jeff, he's just got it. Sorry, Jeff, I do not agree, because he's just got a plan. Sorry, he's got a plan there, so he could just implement it in your 6-point plan.
Right, I refuse to let this degenerate. I'm the only one that can make snide political comments. If you don't mind. Councillor Jackson wants to respond, he can.
Just very quickly, and it's just to recognise that we had the lowest youth unemployment ever in Northumberland before this crisis, And I know that unfortunately there could well be a spike in unemployment in the next few months. But if our young people are trained, if our schools have the quality of outcomes that we're actually looking for and starting to get, if our educational institutions right across Northumberland create the skilled people to provide good jobs for the future, then that's the basis for a sound economy, and that's what we're working for.
Thank you for that. Councillor Heckle, then Councillor Dunn.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'll not be political. Thank you. I mean, I welcome this report. I like particularly the recovery plan. I think it's on, I'm not sure which page it's on. There's a graphic somewhere in that. I'm not sure which page it's on, but I think because it's evidence-based, I think that's really good, because, you know, it needs to be evidence-based. The other thing I have to say is that in terms of recovery, and I accept that, you know, businesses and all the rest of it have to figure highly in that, but this must be at its heart people focused. One of the concerns I have in the report is in relation, I'm not sure it's on, yeah, it's on the well, page 2. It talks about a focus on communities, businesses and the like. The thing that worries me slightly, and it's particularly more relevant perhaps in the southeast, and by the way, there are not many B&Bs in the southeast on tourism, but is in relation to what I would call poverty. I think, well, the recovery is not going to be easy. I accept that. It's going to be very, very difficult. And the thing that concerns me about poverty is there's a degree of in-work poverty as well as pensioner poverty. I can't see any reference to that in the report, and I think it's really imperative that we look at that. I mean, tourism is characterised, I think, by low wage and low skill jobs, and I think we're much more focused on increasing pay and skills within the community of Northumberland. That's the first point. The second one is that in relation to apprentices, which the leader spoke about, would it not be useful to actually use our contracts with suppliers and businesses to encourage greater apprenticeships for young people? In that would be part of the recovery plan that I'll be looking at. Finally, the concern I have in relation to what might happen in the future. We have the prospect of a no-deal Brexit being hit by us probably in the new year. We've also got the possibility of a second spike, and there's been a recent report which talks about potentially up to 120,000 deaths as a consequence of that towards the winter. I just wondered if that recovery plan factored those points in.
Is that going to be Peter that replies to that?
I'll take the issues actually. I think what we can do actually is look at this at the start of a great opportunity for Northumberland and an opportunity to actually increase both the skill level but the income level of just about everyone who lives in the county. We've got the most amazing environment, and we're already hearing stories of people wanting to relocate from London up to Northumberland as a result of the COVID crisis, because we've got a much better environment and we can be naturally socially distanced up here. We've got international companies wanting to invest in especially in the southeast, but right across the county, because we've got this huge opportunity in the offshore industries, and it's creating hundreds and hundreds of very well paid jobs indeed. Our job as a county council is to encourage this sort of investment, but it's also to encourage the skill levels of people, and that starts, like I said before, with the schools. And if we can improve the educational opportunities for each and every young person right across the county, we improve their life prospects for their incomes going forward. And that is the best way to tackle the issue of low incomes. In terms of apprenticeships, we're doing really well in the county. In terms of apprenticeships, the county council itself has up to 350 apprenticeship positions as we speak. And just about all of our major contracts across the county, in particular the school ones, have apprenticeship clauses in them. And the big operators who are doing these really large projects for us have apprenticeship programs, and that's all part of the evaluation process for each of our investments. So we're already on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Alan, you all right with that?
Sorry, I'm just trying to look at the button, Chair. Well, it was just a comment on Brexit and the possibility of a second spike. I just think they are real possibilities, according to what I've read anyway, and from some of the experts. So, you know, what's the response to that?
I think Peter's going to come back again.
Yeah, no, but yeah, we're very well aware of the potential of a second spike. I think on that one, it's actually down to the common sense of the British public to maintain all of the social distancing rules and be as sensible as possible. And that's the way that we'll tackle the second spike. And there's nothing in particular that the county council can do with that, apart from influence, which we're trying to do. But we're putting in the most effective tracking and tracing system that we can, and developing that and improving that on a daily and weekly basis. So that's what we're doing to tackle the second spike. In terms of Brexit, I think we're building on the opportunities that this county has got, and the great opportunities that we've got. And the big opportunity that I haven't talked about yet is the potential of a free port. And if we have free port status for the Blythe and Ashington area, that would actually give us the possibility to trade internationally and do some great sort of offshore manufacturing in particular there.
Thank you, Leader. It's Councillor Dunn now.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Sanderson for once that we have some fantastic country parks in this county and they attract a great number of visitors. However, the importance of smaller local parks and green spaces has really been demonstrated, I think, during this COVID-19 crisis. I think people's immediate environment is so important, and we do need to be assisting in upgrading rundown or poor quality facilities in the smaller villages and towns, and not just concentrating on the big tourist attractions. We need to be creating walkways and cycle paths to link these communities. Several wards in southeast Northumberland remain in the top 10% of the most deprived areas in England. So can I just ask, how will these areas be targeted going forward in order to improve the health and well-being of the residents that live there?
Are you going to take this again, Peter?
Well, shall I take?
We've got Councillor Sanderson here.
Me? Yeah.
Yeah, Glenn.
So I think the point is a good one, but we do look after our smaller parks. We spend a lot of time there. Our volunteers help us a lot, and our staff are very effective in the work they do there. So they are as important as the country parks in terms of providing that link with nature and fresh air and so on. So the point is well made. So far as linkage between towns are concerned, that's actually something that we're working on at the moment in our new walking and cycling policy. And if you have a chance to have a look at that online, you'll see exactly what we're proposing to do. We're spending about getting on for £2 million in our local transport plan spending this year on cycling and walking initiatives, including a lot of work on our new £10 million extra funding on pavements in towns. So we are, and I think you will see the effect of what we plan to do and what we are intending to do in terms of improving cycleways, walkways, and also pavements. There has been, obviously, because of COVID, a bit of a delay in getting started with some of these, but it is very much our intention to spend this money, because it's altogether it's about £28 million, of which a large chunk will be on cycleways, walkways, and so on to link up smaller villages. And it's really important that that Liz continues to keep in touch with me about specific targets that she'd like to see happen in her area, and also with Kath Homer, who is our cabinet member responsible for cycling and walking, who I know will take a keen interest in helping wherever we can.
Okay, Liz. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I will come back, Glenn, because you know specifically which one I'm going on about, which we had outside funding for, but it still wasn't considered viable. So I'll come back to you on that one.
Okay. I think Councillor Gallagher has indicated. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments and questions to ask Peter Jackson. Obviously, one of them is that I very much welcome the investment that's come into Blythe and Blythe Town Centre. As fantastic for the town, the residents, and the possibility of further training and employment. But for 3.5 years, you've sat on a blueprint in Ashington, and the reality is it's been ready to go for a long, long time. Now, I've sat in their meetings for about 3.5 years, and it's never moved very, very far. A lot of promises, but nothing cast in. I just would rather have the reassurances that Ashington hasn't been forgot about. And the other point that I want to make is you mentioned Ashington and Blythe ports. Sadly, Ashington hasn't got a port. Thank you.
Yeah, well, just on that one, the Freeport status is about the hinterland behind the port area. And you're quite well aware of Ashwood Business Park, and that's not very far from Blythe, as you well know. And in terms of Ashington, the development and improvement of the centre of Ashington is absolutely central to our thoughts, and we've been working really hard to get something viable going there. You will obviously be well aware that planning permission was given for the cinema, and work on that project is supposed to start in March. And the planning permission for a large addition to the retail space has also been granted, and work on that will start in the spring as well. So there's a lot going to happen within the next few months in Ashington. In terms of the Northumberland line, you'd be well aware that we were granted an extra £3.5 million from the government to work on the actual detail of delivering that scheme. They're starting to talk to us with increasing frequency, and I think we should hear some very good news on the Northumberland line. We're still aiming to get it up and running by 2023, 2024, but the hope and the hope is, and what we're pushing for, is to get the whole scheme completed in one go rather than in 2 phases, like as was suggested before. Again, it's down to government funding, but we're still very hopeful on that one.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that you all right, Brian? Need to come back here?
I would just like to come back. Thank you very much for those comments, Peter. But thoughts are thoughts and deeds are deeds. Ashington has been promised things for the last 3.5 years since this administration came in. Very little has come on the ground. Support Ashington, support the businesses, and support the residents in there, please. Thank you.
I think you'll find Ashington's been promised things for about 20 or 30 years, and not an awful lot's happened so far. But you'll be very pleasantly surprised in a few months' time.
And all I can say about that, Brian, is the only administration that's ever delivered anything for Ashington was mine. But there you go. Is there anybody else? Can I kick off then? I'm on page 5, and it's 3.8 about the emergency small business grant funding, which is obviously great. You did very well, but I'm not concerned, but I'm just thinking. I did hear something on the news the other day that somebody been arrested for defrauding, not ours, but a similar scheme down Leicester way, I think it was, So I was just wondering about this £84 million that we've given. Are we at some point going to go back just to make sure that everyone was properly given? I'm not saying I'm not saying we've made mistakes. What I'm saying is people have actively tried to get money out of us, and because we're in a hurry to try and help everybody, we've kind of maybe not done the checks we ought to have done.
Yeah. I'll just say something briefly and then bring Dalji in. I think we've given grants out in Northumberland to nearly 7,600 businesses.
Yeah.
And done it in a very effective way, which Dalji will talk about. But you know, when there's effectively free money on offer, everyone's likely to apply. So it's up to the council to have the right systems in place, and I think we have. Dalji?
Yeah, I think, you know, being very fair to our business and our communities, we saw a lot of applications, but the vast majority were well within the eligibility and dealt with promptly. One of the things that, although we did stand up very fast and very promptly and very efficiently, you know, the the revenues and benefits team, finance, they were supported by internal audit, and that was a very deliberate arrangement for us, because I was very mindful, and Chris Hand, our Director of Finance, who led that process, was very mindful of ensuring that the right checks were built in from day one, because obviously, you know, people were required to provide a set of information, an assessment was made, and then a payment was made, sometimes within 48 hours. But as one of the checks, for example, was where it was felt the information wasn't adequate, further information was sought, you know, identity, obviously everybody had correct identity, etc. checks, but additional information about usage of the facility or the business or how it operated. Now, I certainly can't sit here and say that every one of those was perfectly legitimate, but I can say some very clear IT and or internal audit checks in place. And you're right, there has already been a piece of work put in place to ensure that there's also a backward look to check that wherever possible, you know, the right arrangements were made, and that the possibility of fraud can never be prevented, but absolutely minimised.
Thank you. I mean, that's the assurance I seek, really. I'm sure we acted in good faith. We've got a good set of people, especially in Revs and Bens, the first rate. So you're going to hear me dog now. He agrees with me too. So it was just at some point we just need to go back and check, you know, if it was the dip sample or something. So that's good. Then on page 8, it was just the leader was talking about the misnamed Northumberland line. Every time I've heard the Prime Minister mention it, without fail, he has called it the Asherton Blythe Tyne line. Without fail. He stood up in Parliament the other day and said it. Don't shake your head, leader. It's true. Go and check. So you probably need to make certain, one way or another, that you get the name right. And I would prefer the proper name than this made up tosh that you've got here. But that's just me, obviously. Then we're just looking at on page 9, 318. I wonder and worry that we're asking our staff to do a lot of stuff, you know, and a lot of stuff in a hurry. And I just wonder have we got enough people doing it, the business stuff? Do we need to have some more capacity in there?
Good question.
Yes, through myself, Chairman. Through yourself. We have been very lucky this year to recruit Julie Emma McLaughlin to lead our regeneration business commercial, and I know a number of people would have met her now, and the COVID circumstances haven't enabled, you know, face-to-face meetings generally, but she's been getting in touch with people. She's actually conducting a review currently of our arrangements But actually, what I would say to you, you know, we over the last few years have been reviewing our staffing arrangements, and we've had some very clear priorities around business, communities, our people, and, you know, supporting our communities. So from my perspective, you know, I'm absolutely keen to support all of our staff. We've got staff who are looking to do different roles. We have staff who want to do a change, who want to go back to their core business. What I couldn't foresee in the immediate future is recruiting a whole set of, you know, another set of staff at this time, given, you know, we've got some critical priorities to deliver, but also to balance our budget, which is really important. But we as a team, and particularly through this area of work, Julie Emma, along with Chris Hand, who's come in as our finance director, has taken a robust look at all of our back office functions with Kelly. And as a trio and a team, they're sharing staff, they're using some of the service end staff and bringing them over and doing a mix and match. So we will, you know, where necessary, there will be some roles that go out where we've got critical deficits or people leave, but whatever, we will try to ensure that we keep obviously within our staff and budgets.
Yeah, but I would hope the administration might recognise the fact that if there is a gap there, you know, if it's a question of 3 or 4 people that get the thing going, then I think you've just got to take that opportunity and do it. Sorry, I missed one out. Page 8, looking to see, you know, making changes to unlock business opportunities. I'm not going to mention anything in particular or anywhere, but what we do have to bear in mind is that some business opportunities who are going to not have to live up to licensing or planning permissions because of the crisis become a very great nuisance to their neighbours. So you would just, you know, rather than have a headlong rush towards anybody can have any business anywhere to get the economy going, we have to have half an eye on the impact that that is going to have on the area that it's being done. So, you know, let's not just blindly give everybody permission to do anything they like. Think about the impact that it's going to have, particularly in residential areas where perhaps people aren't used to having things open till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. You know, let's not sacrifice the peace in the community on the altar of business, really. So can we just bear that in mind? And I think that's probably, I've written so many things in the margin here. Oh, the only other main thing, because I realise the time's getting on now, is way near the back. I'll just skip over the rest of it. The rest of it's just, I'm looking on page 20 in the little implication boxes. The one thing I would say, what I would like to see in the implication, on these implication boxes, is a COVID-19 box, just to say, on every report, just to say, well, actually, we've looked at it and we don't think there's much of an impact, or, you know, but I think that everything we do should be thought about through the lens of COVID-19 now, because things are never going to be the same again. But anyway, what I'm interested in is the 39.966 million that we were given for the relief of business rates. What I don't understand is, why weren't people just given a credit? Why were we given money to give back to ourselves? That mystifies me. Or, you know, the government, business rates is collected by us and given it to the government, we get a share and all the rest of that stuff. But I don't see why any money would have to change hands, or did it not change hands and it's just the way that's written?
So I'm going to get that, and Dalton can maybe come in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the business rate relief is business rate relief to the businesses, and it's one of the ways that sort of central government has supported businesses through the COVID crisis scheme. Yeah. So it's been a major cash saving for them. but those business rates actually go to the county council to pay for all of our county council services. So the government have sort of backfilled that loss of income for the county council. That's my understanding. Daljit might want to add to that.
Yeah, I think that's how I think it is. I think it's just technically the way the government has done it. Obviously, sometimes you do things in an arranged way, and then you relook, and maybe you could have done it a different way and better. But no, that's the right explanation as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, it was just my understanding was that we weren't in total charge of our business rate income. It went to the government, and the government gave it some of it. Well, it's about business rate retention. It just seemed to me to be a bit of a clumsy way of doing it. That was all.
I will speak to Chris Hand, and maybe we'll get you a written response. Just so
well, if you feel that's necessary, that's fine. And if you're going to send me a written response, will you send it to everybody else as well? And then there's no question. Right then, if we've now come to a natural conclusion of the business, I shall thank everybody for their attendance. I think what we would say as a scrutiny is that we feel as though the council did very well over this period. The reports we've had today have been well written and very informative. I think that from what I've picked up from the expressions on people's faces and what people have said is that what we would like to see the administration and the council itself learn from the positive things that have happened out of this. The community work that we've managed to get at the bottom, let's not lose that. As Councillor Heppel said at the beginning, let's make certain we somehow build on that, use that network for other stuff, bind it to us better. Let's just make certain that any positive thing that's come out of this, like the remote working and all the rest of that stuff, is built on in a constructive way so that we may never have to meet in person again. And on that bombshell, I would thank you all for the there is no urgent business. Thank you all for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you on a screen very near your good selves in the near future. Oh, everybody's waving bye-bye. Take care of yourselves.